Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dan, and in case you have forgotten, I am the IT Geek. Welcome back to another episode within my Microsoft Entra Deep Dive series. I think it's fair to say we are deep into the series now. You know, this is episode 6 or 7, I think. So yeah, we've already covered a lot of ground, covered a lot of great information. I hope you are enjoying the series. Obviously, I've been doing some giveaways. I've done three book giveaways at the moment. As of recording, because I've recorded all my videos in bulk, probably by the time this goes out, I probably will have given them away, but I can't announce it on this video yet because I'm not quite there yet. So I'll be announcing it on social media, as and when. So we're not doing a giveaway this episode. Probably next episode I'll do another one. But let's get started with this episode. So, as I mentioned, we are in the I Am IT Geek Microsoft Entra Deep Dive series. Do a quick recap. What did we cover in the last episode? So it was all about roles and admins in the last episode, and we specifically spoke about there was the role admins tab within Azure Active Directory within the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. And we looked at admin units, explained what they are, and then we configured them. And then we spoke about delegated admin partners. Now, even though I kind of showed this within the tenant, when I showed it kind of what you can do, I didn't actually have any partners, so there's not much I could actually show you. But I kind of explained what they are and I kind of sort of use cases where you'd normally have that populated. So moving on to today, we're on a new topic in that left hand side panel as we've been looking at Azure Active Directory. So this is a bit of a longer one. So this is going to be this topic is going to be 3 parts because there's a lot to cover. So I didn't want to do one huge video. I like to break mine down. I like to do smaller videos, as you're probably aware. So we are actually on the Azure Active Directory Protect and Secure. So this is part 1. And today we're going to cover conditional access. We're then going to talk about identity protection and follow it up by talking about the security center blade within Azure Active Directory. And then obviously throughout I'll be talking about best practices and use cases as well. So the first topic I'm going to cover is conditional access. So let's jump straight into the Microsoft Entra Admin Center and take a look. Welcome back. So here we are back in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, and again moving down this left hand side Azure Active Directory. Now you might notice, okay, Shabazz, you've jumped to billing and settings. I am going to go back to billing and settings, but probably towards the end. I wanted to cover more of the technical content and dig deeper into it, so I will cover billing and settings at the end of the series. So today, as I mentioned, we're covering conditional access, identity protection, and security center. So we're here in conditional access, and for those that don't know what conditional access is, this is a way of controlling essentially access into your applications, your devices, and what you do is you specify or create a policy where a user or a device has to meet certain criteria. Again, that can be, they have to do MFA, a device has to be a certain operating system or certain patching level. It has to be, it has to be encrypted, there's an encryption level, stuff like that. So that's where kind of, and if you look, overview here kind of shows you that, it gives you a policy summary, the devices, applications, name, locations, and what we can do from here, we can either create a new policy or create a new policy from the templates. I'm not quite. We are going to look into creating a new policy shortly. If we click on policies, this tells you what policies we've kind of got here. So again, I've got, because I do a couple of AVD testing in my tenant. If we click on here, I've got a kind of AVD one. So again, this is sort of what it looks like. So again, you give it a name, and the first thing is you need to configure the assignments. So here, if we click on, you can specify a user or a group, and again, best practice is always to do it to a group, because again, just less management. Another best practice, which again I have learned the hard way, always put exclusions in, and make sure your exclusions are your break glass account for Azure AD, and also any sort of global admins. Always worth putting in exclusions, just in the event that this policy does create an issue, does lock you out maybe. It's always worth putting exclusions in so you do have that backdoor in. And the next thing is to specify the kind of cloud app or action that this policy is going to apply to. So we've got an option where you can do cloud apps, user actions, or authentication context. So for this one, I chose cloud apps, and specifically included the Azure Virtual Desktop app. So for this group, for AVD users, so this policy applies to those AVD users for the Azure Virtual Desktop app specifically. And you got conditions like, okay, what do these users in this group need to do when trying to access this application? As you can see, there's different options here you can do. Do they need to, do we need the policy to be enforced for the user risk? Is it high, medium, low? I can enable that. Do we need to enforce sign-in risk? Again, the different levels there. Or do we need to kind of enforce that only certain device platforms can access, or this policy applies to? Again, locations. Does this policy apply to all locations, or trusted locations, or selected locations? In our case, for this, because this is a Azure Virtual Desktop MFA policy, I did the client. I enabled the client apps and I made it apply to both the browser and the mobile apps. Now, because AVD doesn't use legacy authentication, I made sure these two were unticked. Again, we've got here we can filter for devices as well. So again, we can actually include filtered devices in this policy or exclude them if we enable this. And we go down to access control here. So this is where we can grant or deny access, so block access or select additional requirements which need to be satisfied to allow access. So this is where I enabled require MFA. To grant access require MFA, I could also block access to the need to require MFA. But because this was to gain access to that application, the AVD application specifically, and again, you can do all sorts of other things as well as require MFA. You can require the device to be marked as compliant. You require to be hybrid Azure AD joined. So all sorts of options here that you can select. And finally, we've got session control here. So these are control access. We can control access based on session controls to enable limited experiences within specific cloud applications. So again, use conditional access for app control, sign-in frequency, persistent browse sessions. So again, if this is applicable to your requirement, you can use this as well. To my MFA when it wasn't. Down at the bottom here now, again, there's three options. You can either leave it off, turn it on, or report only mode. Now again, as a just learning the hard way from my experience, it's the best practice to always start off with report only mode. So that then just essentially reports what effect this policy has had on your environment. Once you're happy that it's had a positive effect and not a negative effect, turn it on when you're ready. I think it's good as well with users to make sure they know this is happening. That was a bit of a look at the sort of an existing AVD policy, and I suppose you can gather from that how to configure one as well. But as we go further down, we've got some insights and reporting. You can diagnose problems with it as well. And then if we go to manage, we've got named locations now. This is where you can add, named locations are used by Azure AD security reports to reduce false positives and Azure AD conditional access policies. So here I can add countries to my named locations. So I could, let's say UK. Oh. So you could add any sort of country to your named locations, and this is to help kind of reduce false positives. You can also add IP ranges as well to locations, and there's an option there to configure multi-factor authentication for trusted IPs. Now, we are going to cover MFA later on, I think in part 2 of this topic, so I won't go into that yet. But again, the same thing here, you can add an IP range to and mark it as trusted. You can add locations and also mark those as trusted as well. We'll go down, this is something that's in preview, custom controls. So you can add a new custom control into your conditional access. Again, this is like done by JSON. So if you're handy with JSON, you can kind of customize that. This is terms of use. So this is again adding a new terms of use policy for your conditional access. So this can be, especially when you've got, it's for like, again, I did something similar to this for like an RDS policy, like a remote desktop services that we had configured. And this was basically users had to accept the terms of use before they were allowed access. And that was done through, like, obviously RDS is an on-premises service, but I kind of configured Azure App Proxy to do that. And again, that's why we're able to use this terms of use. So you can set up terms of use, you can upload a PDF, make them have to sign it or at least agree to it. As we work our way down, this is for VPN connectivity, so you can create a new certificate. So once the VPN certificate is created in the Azure portal, Azure AD will start using it immediately. And they'll start issuing short-lived certificates to the VPN client. So again, this is if you've got VPN connectivity through Azure AD. With authentication context, again, you can create a new authentication context here. But this is it's used to secure application data and applications in actions in apps like SharePoint and Microsoft Cloud App Security. So more than SaaS products. I've got some shows the configuration steps here. So configure authentication context, assign conditional access policies to authentication context, and tag resources with the authentication context. So again, if this applies to you, for your use case, you can do authentication context and apply that to like SharePoint and your SaaS applications. I guess something else that's in preview currently in conditional access is authentication strength. So this determines a combination of authentication methods that can be used. So in my sort of experience, MFA is a must, and passwordless also is I won't even nice having that. This should be used as well. So as you can see in my tenant, I've got 3 password strengths, authentication strengths that are available: MFA, passwordless MFA, and phishing resistant MFA. So again, all of them use Windows Hello for Business, and as well as with this uses 16 more. The passwordless uses 3 more, as well as Hello for Business, and phishing resistant uses 2 more. So it shows you there you can use FIDO security or certificate-based authentication. Multi-factor authentication uses FIDO, certificate, authenticator app, which is what I use, temporary access pass multi-use, password, Microsoft Authenticator, push. So again, it tells you exactly what it uses there. And this is a classic policy, so this is more the kind of, you can look at all policies here, enable policies or disable policies. Again, I don't have any of those. And this is something new. I think this is the old style policies before conditional access policies. And then we have the normal sort of signing logs and auditing logs as well. So I showed earlier an existing sort of policy, and from that you can really gather, when you create a new policy, it's the same format. All these, we looked at all these earlier. We can give it a name as well. So that is conditional access policies. Let's jump back into the presentation and see what topics next. Welcome back. So we are back in the presentation, and the next topic is going to be identity protection. So let's jump back into the portal and take a look. Welcome back. Here we are back in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, and we are specifically looking at Protect and Secure. And the second part, the second topic, the second feature within this section is identity protection, as we mentioned. So here we are in the overview, and again, overviews are always like a dashboard, kind of gives you an idea of, if you got looks here, we can see all the new risky users detected. See my identity score, which is appalling, embarrassingly appalling. As well as we can configure user risk policy from here. We can look at new risky sign-ins detected. But on the left-hand side here, we've got tutorials, this is always one thing I like about Microsoft portals, and they always have documentation, and which is really good. So you can always click on, what is identity protection and all these how-to guides. But if we move on to the first part, which is protect, really, where we're going to manage stuff, this is like user risk policies. So again, this is where we can actually configure user risk policies, and what we need to do here is kind of define the difference between sign-in risk and user risk. So with user risk policy, you require a secure password change when the user risk level is set to high. And then Azure AD MFA is required before a user can create a new password with the sort of password write back to remediate their risk. With sign-in risk policy, You require Azure AD MFA when the sign risk level is medium or high, so not just high, medium or high, allowing users to prove it's them by using one of their sort of registration authentication methods, remediating that sign-in risk. So some slight differences between the two there. As you can see here, we've got user at risk sign-in policy. We can configure it. But what this, again, if you look at it, is recommended to migrate user risk policies to conditional access for more conditions and controls. So here we can do some. So at the moment we've got this applying to all users. We can obviously change that. We've got user risk here. So we've got likelihood that a user account is compromised. We've got high, medium and above, low and above, mindset to low and above. Finally, the controls, block access or allow access and require password change. As we saw in the sort of conditional access, there was the user risk. If we just go back to conditional access and policies, there was an option for I think it's conditions here. Yeah, user risk and sign risk. So what it's saying is it recommends you use these and configure those there, rather than use the identity protection. But it is still here, so it must still have a use. It's not kind of defunct yet. So here you can configure. Again, you can enable or disable. Same with sign risk policy as well. Same recommendation at the top. Configure the same items, and then enable or disable there. Then we've got multi-factor authentication registration policy. So this isn't the same as the MFA conditional access. So this is in tandem with that as well. So this is essentially saying, multi-factor authentication registration policy and assigning it, usually you assign it to. So at the moment mine's set to all users. But again, it only affects cloud-based Azure MFA. If you have a multi-factor authentication server, it will not be affected. So for new installations, MFA, Azure MFA server is no longer supported, but if you've got existing ones, it still is supported. Again, we are going to take a deeper dive into MFA later on, I think in the next episode. And then we move further down. We can actually look at the reports. We can look at user risk, risky user reports here. Again, there's myself and an on-premises one, which is being at risk. So that just shows information that tells you why it's at risk. And then we go into any risky workload identities. There's none in mine at the moment. Any risky sign-ins, probably loads, none in mine. no, okay, there's not. Oh, it's just still loading. And then again, that'll load the whole list of any risky sign-ins. And then risk detection. Again, this reports what the risk detections have been documented. Nothing at the moment. And as we go down here, you can do some settings, and these are all sort of notification settings. So these are the three administrators that get. Simon Lee, he's still a global admin for some reason. This is these are the three people that get alerted when there's a risky sign-in. And there's a weekly digest as well that gets emailed to these three people as well. So that is a bit of a deeper dive into sort of identity protection. Let's jump back into the presentation and look at what the final topic is. Welcome back. So here we are back in the presentation, and the final topic that we're going to cover is Security Center. So let's jump right back into the portal and take a look. Welcome back. Here we are back in the Azure Active Directory, or the Microsoft Entra Admin Center and Azure Active Directory specifically, and we are down at Security Center within Protect and Secure. So this is just a single kind of tab here within the blade, and what this is doing is it's basically giving us recommendations within our tenant around the different severity levels. So you can see I've got 7 high severity, 4 medium and 8 low. It actually gives you recommendations around the identity and access. And what this is telling us is if we enable MFA on some accounts, we'll get 50 more score on our secure score. So we can actually go in here, look at what the remediation steps are, look what the affected resources are, and actually remediate that. And again, what Security Center is doing is making recommendations on how to increase our security footprint within Microsoft Entra, specifically Azure AD. So it's more of an informational sort of, I'd say, area rather than being able to configure a policy or anything. It's allowing you to see what needs to be done to increase your footprint, security footprint, and actually go and actually configure that. Obviously, for a more broader look at your sort of security across your sort of your virtual networks and your data and everything. Microsoft, you recommend Microsoft Defender for Cloud. That's kind of outside the scope of this series. I might do that. Might be my next series. You never know. But that's kind of it for Security Center. It's more of an informational area where you can look at what you can remediate and the steps to do that. That's really it for this episode. We've obviously covered a lot of information. It's part one of a 3-part topic is protect and secure. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you again so much for the support and the for watching the video. It's been so far the feedback's been amazing, and a lot of people seem to be watching the video, so they must like this topic. So yeah, I do appreciate all your support. There's loads of useful links in the description. You see my socials in there. Some links to Microsoft Learn where you can look at specifically for Secure Score, for Conditional Access, so you can have a look at those. And also the link to the previous episode as well, in case you want to update yourself on that. So thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, goodbye.